Hey everyone, so I just got a bunch of good new banknotes and you got to see these, so let's get into it. First up from Iraq, we have 25 dinars from the year 1986. Pretty interesting color scheme we got going on. It is in Arabic, of course, because Iraq is an Arabic speaking country. Pretty neat design going on the back. This is a monument in Baghdad here in the middle. You can see the historical uh, Mesopotamian gates on this side here. This is known as the Al Shahid Memorial. It is in Baghdad, or it was in Baghdad. I'm assuming it's probably still there. And on the front, we can see Saddam Hussein, who was in charge of Iraq at that time, and the Battle of Al Qadisiyah, I think it's pronounced. Over here, it's a historical battle, as you can tell, because they got all the horses going on. But we can see a little moment in the history of Iraq there, as well as on the back here in this little lion here, which is a Mesopotamian lion. Also, I think this is a pretty odd color scheme. We got purple, blue, green, and green, as well as brown. I've never seen that combination used before, so I think that's pretty interesting. Next up, we got two consecutive banknotes, as you can see here, from South Africa, both worth 10 Rand. I'm just going to show this one here since they are the same. It's 10 Rand in Afrikaans and English. We got this Dutch guy over here. I recognize him, but I don't remember his name. Over on this side, we got a cute little flower in the middle. Interesting geometric designs and actually kind of a pretty neat font we got going on, especially with the R and the N in Rand. It is a 10 Rand banknote. Can't seem to see a date on here. And as you can see, we got a ram and I'm guessing that's an ox on the back with the typical South African plains landscape with some little rock features going on in the back. Let me check on Numista. I'm going to get some more info on this one. So it turns out this guy here, his name is John van Riebeck. He was one of the first Dutch figures to reach modern South Africa, pretty relevant guy in South African history. And these don't have a date. However, based on the type, they were made between 1985 and 1990. So in the waning years of the apartheid era. And if you look at the banknotes, this banknote here versus the ones that were issued afterwards, there's a noticeable difference with Jan van Riebeck's not on the banknotes anymore. They now have more animal images. They don't have like a ram and an ox, but now they have like rhinoceroses is one of the new ones. And in the more recent ones, they put Nelson Mandela on the banknotes. And they also have more languages. So this banknote only has two languages, Afrikaans and English. Now, the current South African banknotes also have Afrikaans and English, as those are common languages in South Africa. However, they now include some of the native South African languages like Zulu and Xhosa too. So this is an interesting banknote because it shows us how society in South Africa was changing from the 1980s to the 1990s with the end of the apartheid government and the introduction of equality for all of South Africa's citizens. So this is a really interesting banknote. And like I said, we got two consecutives. And consecutives are also, I always really like seeing consecutives. They're really neat to see the different serial numbers. Next up, we got another appearance of Myanmar. We got 10 kyats from the year 1973, undated, but 1973 according to Numista. And on the front, we can see a picture of General Aung San. And on the back, we can see a ceremonial Burmese urn. This is an interesting color scheme too. We got a lot of different colors. This is a lot of colors in one scheme. We got pink, green, purple, black and brown right here in the corner. We got yellow. I always like seeing these banknotes with a lot of color going on in them. And as you can see, this is written in the Burmese language, mostly in the Burmese script, although there is also English script as well. And this is the first Burmese banknote I have, which has a portrait of a figure very central to a lot of the other ones. They just have like a statue or something like that. So this is another interesting banknote. Next up, we got 10 pesos, or as you can see right beneath it, one condor from the South American nation of Chile, a geographically very narrow country on the Pacific Ocean. And as you can see, it is in Spanish. It's not dated, but it is known to have been printed between the years of 1958 or 1959. And on the front, we got pretty interesting. This is a much more simpler color scheme. It's almost entirely red with a little yellow on the bottom there. And on the this side here, I can't tell which side is because it's mirrored on my computer, is a picture of Manuel Bulnes, who I assume to be a important figure in Chilean history. On the back, we can see it's mostly geometric designs. We do have a Chilean seal off to one side. This is a very minimal banknote, very minimalist design, but I really like it. I really like the strong use of lines to create texture here, as you can see. I also think the font here, this is a very interesting font, very block looking. Almost looks very modern for the late 50s. I usually don't see fonts like this from that time period, so it's pretty interesting. So this is another really neat banknote we got here. Next up, we'll be heading over to Southeast Asia with one ringgit from the nation of Malaysia, part peninsula, part of an island. And as you can see here, it is written in the Malay language. This is one ringgit issued between the years 1967 and 1972, when it's actually differentiated from the other banknote similar to this one because of the spelling of this word and this word here. Very interesting. It was printed in the United Kingdom for Malaysia. And we can see on the front, I should introduce this guy here. He is Tunku Abdul Rahman, who I believe was the Malaysian head of state at the time. Malaysia does have a monarchy or a monarchical type government. Not exactly sure off the top of my head of the exact details, but I do know it is an inherited position, probably considered a monarchy. And on the back, we have the seal of Malaysia, or I believe that is the seal of Malaysia there. Neat geometric designs going on. A lot of the banknotes will have like this very strong emphasis on like the geometric designs, kind of similar like the Indonesian one we saw last time. This is a really well designed banknote in my opinion. I wouldn't describe it as being minimalist. I will also say the color scheme is very interesting. It's almost entirely blue. It's entirely blue on the back, but on the front here, you can see we got a couple different colors in this little twist design here. Very neat. We got, looks like purple, red, green. This little part here, this is actually kind of futuristic looking because this banknote it's not dated, but it was printed between 1967 and 1972. And I feel like this design, like kind of right here in the middle, looks very futuristic for like the late 60s and the early 70s. So this is another really neat banknote. Here we've got Malaysia again, but not independent Malaysia. Let me show you. $1 from Malaya and British Borneo, dated exactly, I'm going to hold it here because of that little rip, 1st of March, 1959. And as mentioned earlier, Malaysia is a geographically interesting country because they're part peninsula and part of an island. Now, the island that the part of insular Malaysia is located on is Borneo. British Borneo is what is now insular Malaysia. Malaya is the peninsula, what is now peninsular Malaysia. And as you can see here, they were administered as one unit by the British colonial government, which is probably the reason why they are now the single country of Malaysia. Now, as you can see here, this is a British colonial banknote. There is not an inch of Malay on this at all. I'm having trouble holding this. As you can see here, we do have a little bit of Arabic, interestingly, since Arabic isn't really a common language there. Maybe it's, well, actually, now I think about it, it could be Malay in an Arabic script, but I'm not really sure about that. It isn't used in Arabic now. It's now used in a Latin script. But as you can see here, we got $1 from the Board of Commissioners of Currency for Malaya and British Borneo. We got a cute little boat here on the front, and a watermark in the middle, which is actually pretty uncommon in banknotes. This is once again a very blue design. It's almost entirely blue. We do have a little bit of yellow over where it says $1. And on the back, you can see we got another boat. It's at the shore. All the people look like they're pushing it onto the shore. We have a few seals here, interestingly, one of which, all the way over closest to the one, is the seal of Brunei, which is now an independent country. They are Malay speaking, but they are now separate from Malaysia. There are also the other coats of arms. The one in the middle, I believe, it looks like the one for Singapore, but I believe Singapore was a separate colonial unit. Well, actually, I think Singapore was actually part of Malaya. So yeah, it makes sense that this would be here. Yeah, in the middle, that's Singapore, which was part of Malaya. It was actually briefly part of Malaysia, but they ended up leaving not long afterwards. And the other three coats of arms, I presume, correspond to other parts of modern Malaysia. I don't really recognize them off the top of my head. Do have a little bit more Arabic or Malay and Arabic script here. So this is a really neat banknote in the colonial history of Southeast Asia, and it really shows us, in comparison to the Malaysian ringgit banknote, we can really see the stark differences between what Malay society looked like under colonial rule and after they gained independence. So this is another really neat and a very historically and socially relevant banknote. So I actually just did a little checking, and it turns out I was able to see the list of exactly what each of these symbols mean, since they're not really that recognizable anymore. And from the one towards the Arabic script, we got Brunei, we got Sarawak, which is, I believe, the more southern part of Malaysian Borneo. In the middle, we got Federation of Malaya, which I believe corresponds to peninsular Malaysia, apart from Singapore. Next, it turns out this is actually Singapore. Here you can see they changed their symbol significantly. And right above the Arabic script, the last one is North Borneo, which would be the northern part of insular Malaysia. Just thought that would be interesting to explain what the little symbols meant. Next up, we'll be handing over to Scandinavia with 10 kronor from Sweden, dated exactly to the year 1981. As you can see, we have a picture of the Swedish king Gustav the Sixth Adolf. Yes, they put his little number there in the middle of his name. Not exactly sure what the pattern is there. We also have the Swedish seal in the middle. It is written in the Swedish language, of course, mostly green, although we have some different colors going on with the seal. On the back, this is very interesting. First, I thought this was just a design of some sort with some little snowflakes in the front, but turns out this is actually an artistic rendition of the Northern Lights, and I've never seen them depicted like this before. I've only ever seen photos of them. This is actually, I didn't recognize it at first, but when you know that it's Northern Lights, it actually looks a lot like Northern Lights. Also, we got 3 little snowflakes, very neat. Mostly, actually, kind of got a purple and green going on here on the back. And this is my second ever Swedish banknote, which is pretty interesting. So got another neat banknote right here, just like the rest. Next up, we'll be heading down to Oceania with $1 from New Zealand. Same issue as the $2 from New Zealand in my last video. And as you can see, it's mostly brown, very similar. We got Elizabeth II on the front. This doesn't have a date, but based on the signature and serial number, we know that it was printed sometime between 1975 and 1977. And on the back, we got some more flora and fauna. We got a fantail bird and some clematis flowers. Very nice seeing the wildlife in New Zealand on here. And I actually had a newer New Zealand banknote for $5 with Sir Edmund Hillary on the front. I don't know where that is now, But now I do have two banknotes from New Zealand, $1 and $2 from the same series. I don't remember the exact date of the $2 because that one also doesn't have a date on it either. But really neat to see New Zealand again. So another neat banknote we got here. So actually, I slightly misremembered. This banknote is older than the $2 banknote. It's very similar. It also has Queen Elizabeth, but in a different image. It's actually from a later issue in the 80s. So similar time period, similar setup, same image, same person actually, Queen Elizabeth II. So easy to get confused. I just thought I should clear that up. Next up, we got an interesting banknote from East Asia, 20 yen from Japan, but you might notice it's mostly in English. And that's because this is Allied military currency that was printed in the US and then sent to Japan. As you can see on the bottom, it does say military currency. We also have some limited Japanese script, but it is mostly in English. We can know it's from 1945, despite not having a date because of that large B you can see on either side. And it's a pretty minimally designed banknote. It is military currency, of course, so usually not that detailed. Although I will say the design they do have here, it is minimalist. I really like the way they have this. It kind of reminds me of like a fleur de lis in the middle here. It's all brown on the back. They got a very fancy border going on, a little more Japanese along the bottom. And once again, very good use of line for the backing design. On the front, we got the text is almost entirely in purple, interesting color of choice. We got a brown frame, sort of like the ones you see on US dollars, and blue in the middle. Got this wave design going on. Really neat. Also, very interestingly historically relevant because it is from 1945, Allied military currency for Japan. So, this is the end of World War II we're talking about. So, this is a historically and design wise a very interesting banknote. So, another good addition to the collection we have here. Next up in that same area, we got 10 won from Taiwan from the year 1960. It is marked on here, it's just marked in a different calendar. And as you can see, it is in Chinese. We have a picture of Kuomintang founder Sun Yat sen over here. And on the other side, we got a picture of a neat railroad bridge going over the Chuoshui River. And as you can see, the color scheme is mostly red with some blue in the middle and a yellow back. And on the rear, we got the denomination stated in Latin. Well, actually, it's Arabic numerals, not Latin numerals. On the front, we have the Chinese numerals. And in the middle, we got a nice picture here of the presidential palace in Taipei. And this is the second Taiwanese yuan. Although, interestingly, the currency it's issued under is known as the Taiwanese new dollar. It's been called that since 1949. So that's an interesting difference in name within the currency going on here. So another really neat addition to the collection here. Next up, we'll be looking at Africa with £1 from the nation of Nigeria. As you can see here, it is mostly in English. We got a red and brown color scheme going on. We got a picture of a bank building, presumably in Lagos, which was the capital of Nigeria at that time. We do have a little bit of Arabic too for the populations in the far north part of Nigeria, where I'm assuming some limited amount of Arabic is probably spoken due to their geographical location. We can see the seal of Nigeria above the watermark. Pretty interesting bank building we got here. And on the back, we got a picture of an agricultural worker meeting a cluster of date palms. Very interesting. So view here into everyday life and the economy of Nigeria in 1965. This banknote doesn't have a date clearly written on it anywhere. Now, Nigeria no longer uses the pound, they now use the naira. And Lagos is no longer the capital of Nigeria. I still think it's either the largest city or one of the largest cities as it is still a prominent location in Nigeria. The capital is now Abuja, which is a newer city built in the 1980s. So it's very interesting to see the difference between this banknote, a Nigerian pound from the 1960s, and a modern banknote, a Nigerian naira. So this is a very historically interesting banknote because it gives us a snapshot into a moment in Nigerian history showing the changing times within the country. So, very interesting banknote. Good addition to the collection. So, this next one here, we got 10 lire from Italy from the year 1944. Now, I already have one of these banknotes, but it's not in as good of condition. So, this is a replacement banknote. You can see this one is still very good for its age. We got a picture of the head of Jupiter, and it's in Italian, of course. It's from the year 1944, and interestingly, never center watermark. You only see those on modern banknotes. And now on the back, really neat design. We got allegorical figures for agriculture and industry. Very neat. We got a lot of geometric design going on. Interesting use of font here. This is a really neat banknote. A lot of the banknotes from the 40s look really good. So this is another good addition to the collection and a good replacement note as it is in better condition than the one that I already have. Next up, we got a quite small and quite interesting looking banknote. We've got 1 rupee from Pakistan. Now, as you can see, we got a neat floral design going on in the middle. Very good use of color here. We also have the crescent and star seal, similar to that seen on the flag of Pakistan, which isn't surprising as Pakistan is an Islamic country and this type of symbolism is very prevalent in Islamic art. And as you can see, the language is Urdu, which is basically the same language as Hindi, but written in an Arabic, or actually, it's a Persian script. It looks more Persian than Arabic. And this banknote doesn't have a date, but based on a few details, most noticeably this signature here belonging to Habibullah Baig, we are able to tell that this banknote dates to 1984 and sometime between 1984 and 1987. On the back here, we can see the tomb of Allama Muhammad Iqbal in the Pakistani city of Lahore. And also distinctive is this text on the bottom here. We also have some English here on the back. Not a lot of English, but just enough to identify the banknote. This is an interesting looking location. I've never heard of it before, but it's probably of some prominent figure in Pakistani history. Allama Muhammad Iqbal, of course. I don't really know who he is, but interestingly, we can see his tomb. Now, there's not as much color on the back, but still really neat looking. So, this is a really neat banknote. Also, a smaller one. You really don't see smaller ones that much anymore, unless it's a very small denomination, which isn't surprising for this one, as it is only 1 rupee. So, another neat addition to the collection right here. Now, next up, we got another addition from Pakistan. This time, we got a much larger banknote of 10 Pakistani rupees. Now, over here, once again, it is in Urdu. And over here, we can see a picture of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, a very prominent figure in the early history of independent Pakistan. I believe he was a notable figure in the movement for independence from British rule, which is when India and Pakistan were split, as well as what is now Bangladesh, which was originally part of Pakistan. And this banknote doesn't have a date, but we can tell it is from 1980. It was made sometime between 1982 and 1984. Much more simpler. We got some blue, pink, and purple going on in the middle, but it's mostly this nice green shade. Kind of neat borders we got going on here. And on the back, we got a picture of. We actually also have a seal up here. I don't recognize that. It's probably some government group in Pakistan. This is a picture of the Mohenjo-daro ruins in Sindh. So this is an interesting little piece of Pakistani history here, because you can tell these are ancient ruins of a very historical site. I don't really know that much about it, but still need to see this. So, another neat Pakistani rupee for the collection here. All right, so we're going to be back in Europe on this one. We got 20,000 marks from Germany, dated exactly to 20 February 1923. Now, as you can probably tell, Germany was going through extreme inflation, and this was the height of German Nachgeld. Now, this is not Nachgeld, this is official government currency. Now, the inflation was very severe that even high denominations like this were not really able to get you that much. Now, this is a pretty interesting color scheme. We got this neat frame. We got red and green. We got some bar over here. Usually there's not a lot of imagery on the banknotes from this time, but they're still very well designed. We got a pretty impressive font going on too. Back is a pretty simple design, the same colors. We can see that it is marked as a Reich banknote, meaning that is official German currency. And we can see the number again, denomination spelled out and shown as a number. And these are very interesting banknotes because despite being 20,000 mark we're looking at here, this banknote really couldn't get you that much. The inflation was that severe that entire wheelbarrow of currency could only get you like a loaf of bread. The really low denomination banknotes, like they were still making 1 mark banknotes that were effectively just being used as wallpaper because they couldn't get you anything. So this is another really neat historical banknote. Also, really neat design going on, even without much imagery. It's still very well done. So another good addition to the collection. Now, for this one, we'll be going back to Southeast Asia again with 1 peso from the Philippines. Now, there's no date on this, but based on the signatures on the front here of Macapagal and Castillo, this was made between 1961 and 1965. On the front here, we can see we have a picture of Apolinario Mabini. Now, interestingly, this is entirely in English and not Filipino, which is interesting as the Philippines had been an independent country since the late 1940s at this point. I think this might have been printed in the US or the Philippines, but even then, they could have still changed the language. So, odd they wouldn't have printed in Filipino instead. With that aside, we can see that we have the seal of the Central Bank of the Philippines over here. And this is very similar to a US dollar, which isn't that surprising since, once again, it was probably printed in the US and the Philippines had been a US territory prior to gaining independence. Before then, they had been a Spanish colony, which is why they use pesos. And on the back, we can see, once again, very similar to a US dollar here, a picture of the Bara Soane Church. Don't really know much about that, but I'm guessing it's in a place called Bara Soane because that's the name. Not really sure though. Still pretty interesting. We can see it is Spanish colonial type architecture, along with a pretty thick tree up in the front. Interesting to see some of the culture and the fauna of the Philippines. And a picture of an important historical figure on the front. I don't know much about Apolinario Mabini off the top of my head, but I'm guessing he must be quite relevant to be put onto the peso. So, another interesting addition to the collection and an interesting view into life in early independent Philippines during the 1960s. Well, I guess you could say independent because it had probably been less than 20 years at that point. So, historically, very interesting banknote. Good addition for the collection. Next, we got an interesting addition from over in the Indian Ocean, 50 rufiyaa from the Maldives. Now, as we can see here, it's actually kind of a little hard to read because how this was designed here. It's written in Maldivian, also known locally as the Hivehi. And we can see that there are 2 dates, 2000, the year 2000, and also 1421. Now, the reason why there's also 1421 is because the year 2000 is considered the year 1421 in the Islamic calendar, and the Maldives are a very Islamic country. Almost the entirety, if not the entirety, of the population are Muslims. And in the middle, we can see it looks like we got coconuts. They got a lot of coconuts because the Maldives are an island country made up of atolls in the Indian Ocean on that similar vein, we have a picture of a sailing boat, which of course would be very relevant as they are an island country. So a lot of boats, a lot of fishing will be going on. It'll be a central part of their economy and society, probably the culture as well, since they have been living on these islands for a very long time. And on the back, we got a pretty interesting scene here of a weekly market. Also, we got it's labeled in English here. And this is a sort of market you'd probably see in a place like Malaya, which is the capital of the Maldives and a very large city. It's interesting. If you look at them on a satellite, the urban area goes right up to the coast. So where a lot of the people live in the Maldives is in the capital, Malaya. And you'll probably see markets like this. If we get a look, we can see a lot of the people. They got the tables. They're selling the goods. We also can see some bananas and chickens. So very interesting little scene here of daily life in the Maldives. A little snapshot into Maldivian culture, and also you get a little bit of that on the front too from the boat and the coconuts. And this is also an interesting one because I actually have a few other Maldivian banknotes from an internet purchase, but this is the first one I've ever encountered like in the wild in person before. In the Maldives, they have a very low population. They are a country made up of atolls in the Indian Ocean, so that's not really surprising, which probably explains why I've rarely ever encountered these. This is the first one I've ever found in person. So, another very interesting addition for the collection right here. Also, the rufiyaa is, I believe, closely linguistically related to rupee from India because they are very close to India. So, neat addition to the collection here. Next up, we got a non paper banknote made out of, I think, plastic here. 1,000 colones from Costa Rica, dated exactly to 11 September 2013. And as you can see here, we got a picture of Braulio Carrilla Colonna, a Costa Rican historical figure. On this side, we got a Costa Rican seal or symbol in the middle. So I have a little plastic watermark of his little picture on there. It is in Spanish because Costa Rica is in Central America, which is the Spanish speaking apart from Belize. And on the back, we got a little scene of the wildlife here in Costa Rica, bosque seco, as they describe it up there. And we got that interesting. We got two plants here. We got this cactus here, a pitahaya, a little flower here, a guanacaste, and a whitetail deer, venado cola blanca, as they put it in Spanish. So this is interesting. Get a little snapshot here of the wildlife in Costa Rica, which there is a lot of forested area there. And I actually know about whitetail deer here in the U.S. I've never really looked at their full range. I didn't know they had a whitetail deer down in Costa Rica. Assuming that's a white-tailed deer, Venado Cola Blanca. I'm not really, my Spanish hasn't gotten that far yet, but I'm pretty sure based on visual identification that is a white-tailed deer. Also, it doesn't really say much about this trio. That's pretty neat looking there in the back. So, another neat addition for the collection, another non-paper banknote here, 1,000 colones from Costa Rica. So, this is a neat banknote right here. Oh, so I should clarify. This is a polymer banknote. They're sometimes called plastic banknotes because they look very plastic-like. I think polymer actually may be considered a form of plastic, but plastic in general isn't really used as a banknote material. It's polymer in specific. So just thought I should probably clarify that about the material of this banknote because as you can see, it is not paper. It is more plastic looking. Next up, we got another Central American country here. We got 5 pesos from Mexico, dated exactly to 22nd July 1970. As you can see, it is in Spanish, very neatly designed here, made by let me look at the front there, the American Banknote Company. So this was printed in the U.S. Now, unlike the Filipino peso, this was changed to Spanish because it was being sent to Mexico, which is what the American companies usually did. They would print in the language of the country they were sending it to. As you can see, there's a Very well made picture, very pretty looking image in the middle here, very well drawn. This is a rendition of a piece by Robert Savage called Ideal Head of an Algerian Girl. Now, a common misconception is that this was the mistress of a government official. That's not true. This is just a picture that Savage made that they decided to put on the banknote. And on the back, you can see a very nice monument in the middle, very nice geometric designs we got. That piece in the middle is Monumento a la Independencia by Antonio Rivas Mercado and Enrique Alciati. So, nice architecture and a sculpture we got going on here. Little piece of the Mexican landscape. So, another really interesting addition and a good addition for the collection right here. Next up, we got a bit of an older banknote here. We got 100 dinar from Yugoslavia, dated to appears to be 1 May 1946. So this would have been the early stages of when Yugoslavia was shifting from a monarchist country to a socialist country after World War II. And you can see here we have the new socialist seal of Yugoslavia. We got a picture of a farmer and what looks like a metal worker here on the front. We can also see the different languages, which will be actually be better illustrated on the back when we see the names of the countries within Yugoslavia. We have, it's around the edge here, Macedonia, Crna Gora, which is more better known by outsiders like us as Montenegro, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which interestingly appears to be written in Serbian rather than Bosnian. So it looks like Bosnian as a language wasn't getting much recognition here on the back. We can see a little fisherman guy. And this is also very interesting banknote because if we look at this side right here, it might look normal, but this A right here, this first A should actually be a L. Well, not English L, it's acrylic L looking letter. And this is a printing error, which they did initially early on, and it was corrected, but these banknotes are not as common as the ones without the error, so this is a very interesting addition to the collection. And just a very interesting banknote to see the shift from monarchist to socialist in Yugoslavia. So, very interesting addition to the collection. For this next banknote, we'll be heading back to Africa again, as we got $2 from Zimbabwe, dated to the year 1983. Now, interestingly, it says Harare, 1983, which is an interesting change because during the 1980s, Zimbabwe shifted from a white minority dominated government when it was known as Rhodesia to a more ethnically equal government, which the Black Native Africans were also taking part in. And a lot of the city names were changed to reflect the ethnic composition of the country. So Harare used to be called Salisbury, which sounds like a city you'd find in the middle of England. But now they renamed it to Harare. And interestingly, this was the first series of banknote of this type to have Harare on the front. It's a little interesting moment in Zimbabwean history there. Now, about what we're seeing on the front, it is written in English, of course, because Zimbabwe was a British colony. Might see we got these interestingly stacked rocks over here. These are the Chirema balancing rocks, which you can find in Matopos National Park. Pretty recognizable landmark. They also look pretty large based on those plants on the bottom. And over here, we got a picture of a water buffalo, one of the many animals from the fauna of Zimbabwe. Very interesting blue sort of design we got going on here. And on the back, we can see the Kariba Dam on the Zambezi River and a tigerfish. Another piece of the Zimbabwean fauna and another prominent landmark in the Zimbabwean landscape. Now, it's interesting this is only a $2 bill because Zimbabwe would later undergo massive inflation, and the Zimbabwean dollar is quite well known for its banknotes, which can be denominated into the trillions. And Zimbabwe's inflation got so bad that they actually stopped using their own Zimbabwean dollar and let in a bunch of foreign currencies to replace it. Now, they did try bringing back a domestic currency not long ago, and they did put the good old Charemba rocks right back on the front. But unfortunately, I don't really know the exact details, but I've heard they're having some issues with that. Hopefully, Zimbabwe's financial woes will lessen soon, as I can only imagine that severe inflation forcing you to print banknotes into the trillions cannot be good for the general population. So, a very interesting banknote, a very interesting denomination, too. So, another good addition for the collection. For our last banknote, we got an interesting European one here. 5 francs from Belgium, dated exactly to 16 March 1938. Up here, we got a little conjoined portrait here of King Albert and who I presume to be his wife, Queen Elizabeth. And as you can see, the front here is in French, very ornately designed, very fancy border, very nice font we got going on, really good condition for a banknote from 1938. And on the back, we can see interesting little landscape here in light blue. On the further up, we got this guy sitting here. He looks kind of like a sailor, if you ask me, based on his outfit. And the back here is in Dutch, or as it is known in Belgium, because of the region where it is spoken, Flemish, because the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium is Flanders. And there isn't as much Dutch slash Flemish on this banknote. This is a very nice scene we got going on here. Interesting to see the difference in how much language is being used. Just as nice as the front on the back here, though, design-wise. And it's very interesting to see this banknote because it's from 1938, and that's like basically on the eve of World War II when Belgium was occupied by Nazi Germany. And over here in the US, the beginning of World War II is usually associated with 1941 because that's here the Pearl Harbor attack happened. However, in Europe, World War II basically started in 1939 when Nazi Germany staged a false flag attack against a radio station and blamed it on Poland, which led to the UK and France declaring war on Nazi Germany. And Belgium would go on to be occupied by Nazi Germany during the 1940s. It was eventually liberated by the Allies. And this is a very interesting banknote because it comes from Belgium right before all this began to go down. So it's very interesting to see. It'd be very interesting to know what the people in Belgium were thinking at the time. I haven't really heard Belgium mentioned that much in discussions about World War II because even though they were a major country at this time, they did have colonies in Africa. They are geographically and demographically a quite smaller country. Places like the UK and France tend to overshadow them. So this is a very interesting banknote, very nice design-wise, and very interesting to see the difference in language between French and Dutch, or also known as Flemish. So a really good addition to the collection. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and turn on notifications if you like this video. Have a good day.